There's a moment most people never talk about. It happens quietly, no warning, no announcement. It's the moment you realize you've been working, trying, pushing, and somehow you're still in the same place. Same stress, same bills, same cycle. You're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not incapable, and yet nothing changes. That's the real pain. Not failure, but repetition. Because the most dangerous place in life is not the bottom. It's being stuck just above it. Working hard enough to survive, but never enough to escape. And here's the truth most people will never tell you. Poverty is not just a lack of money. It's a system that feeds on your effort without letting you break free. In this audiobook, Escape Low Income, you are about to uncover why 95% of people stay trapped in financial struggle. And more importantly, how to break out of it. Not with luck, not with shortcuts, but with awareness, strategy, and a shift in how you think, act, and move. We're going to walk through this step by step. You'll discover why working harder often keeps you stuck, the hidden gravity that pulls people back into poverty, the mindset patterns that silently sabotage income growth, the difference between survival thinking and expansion thinking, and the exact shifts required to create escape velocity in your life. This is not financial advice. This is not a get-rich-quick fantasy. This is a reality check, a recalibration, a blueprint for those who are ready to stop surviving and start building. Because here's the line you need to remember. You don't stay poor because you lack effort. You stay poor because your effort is trapped in the wrong system. And by the end of this audiobook, you will never see your life the same way again. But first, we need to talk about something uncomfortable, something most people avoid their entire lives. Because if you don't understand this, you will keep working harder and getting nowhere. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Invisible Cage. Most people think they're free. They wake up, they go to work, they earn money, they make choices. It looks like freedom. But look closer. How many of those choices are actually yours? You work because you have to. You spend because you need to. You save what's left, if anything is left, and then you repeat. Day after day, month after month, year after year. This isn't freedom. This is maintenance. And maintenance is the quietest form of imprisonment. Because it doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like responsibility. That's why people stay in it. They don't question it. They normalize it. They defend it. But deep down, there's always that voice, the one that whispers late at night. There has to be more than this, and there is. But to see it, you have to understand the structure you're inside. Because poverty isn't just about money. It's about patterns. Patterns of thinking, patterns of reacting, patterns of spending, saving, fearing, and deciding. And these patterns are not random. They are learned, conditioned, reinforced over time. As highlighted in materials like The Divide is not just income, it's mentality. The way people interpret money, risk, and opportunity shapes everything that follows. Some people are taught to survive. Others are taught to build. And that difference changes everything. Because when your entire life is built around avoiding loss, you never position yourself for gain. You play defense forever. You protect what little you have. You hesitate. You delay. You overthink. And while you're doing that, someone else is building, expanding, taking calculated risks, creating systems, multiplying. This is the invisible cage. It's not locked from the outside. It's reinforced from within. Every time you say, I can't afford it, I'll wait until things are stable, I just need to be safe, you tighten the bars, and safety, ironically, becomes the very thing that keeps you stuck. Because safety feels good in the short term, but it costs you everything in the long term. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If your entire life is built around avoiding risk, you'll never experience growth. That's not motivation. That's math. But don't misunderstand this. This is not about blaming you. This is about waking you up. Because once you see the cage, you can start breaking it, but most people never do. Because breaking it requires something they've never practiced before. Discomfort. And that brings us to the next chapter. Dear friend, you are definitely on the right track if you are watching this video. Like, subscribe, and write in the comments which topic or problem concerns you the most. We promise to prepare a professional video explanation at your request. Chapter 2. The Gravity of Staying Poor. Imagine this, a rocket sitting on the ground, engines ready, fuel loaded, everything prepared for takeoff. Now imagine it fires its engines, uses almost all its fuel, but not enough. What happens? It doesn't almost reach space. It doesn't get halfway there. It falls right back down, sometimes harder than before. That is exactly how financial struggle works. It's not linear, it's gravitational. You don't slowly climb out of poverty with small effort. You either break free or you fall back. And most people fall back, not because they didn't try, but because they didn't reach escape velocity. They worked harder, saved a little, made progress, and then life happened. Unexpected expense, medical bill, job instability, rising costs, and suddenly everything resets, sometimes worse than before, because now there's frustration, exhaustion, doubt, and that emotional weight becomes part of the next cycle. This is the gravity of staying poor. It's not just external pressure, it's internal depletion. Every failed attempt makes the next attempt harder. Every setback drains energy, and over time, people stop trying to escape. They settle into survival. They lower expectations. They shrink their vision, not because they want to, but because they're tired. And that's how the system wins, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Because here's the truth. In the system of poverty, average effort produces zero progress. You need disproportionate action, different thinking, strategic moves, not just more effort, because doing more of what doesn't work will never work. And yet, most people stay trapped there, working harder, hoping longer, waiting for something to change, but nothing changes, because they're still inside the same system, still playing by the same rules, still thinking the same way. And until that changes, nothing else will. So the real question is not, how do you make more money? The real question is, how do you break the gravity that keeps pulling you back? Because once you understand that, everything begins to shift. But the next truth might challenge everything you believe about effort itself. You think the problem is that you're not working hard enough. That's what you've been told your entire life. Work harder, stay longer, push more, sacrifice more, and eventually it will pay off. But what if that's the lie? What if the very thing you've been relying on is the thing keeping you stuck? Let's go deeper. Chapter 3. Why hard work alone keeps you poor. There's a dangerous belief that sounds noble. It sounds disciplined. It sounds respectable. It sounds right. Hard work always leads to success. But reality tells a different story. Look around. There are people working 12 hours a day, still struggling, people juggling 2 jobs, still behind, people doing everything right, still stuck in the same place. So what's going on? Is hard work broken? No, but it's incomplete because hard work without direction is just energy spent in circles. Imagine running as fast as you can on a treadmill. You're sweating, you're exhausted, you're pushing yourself, but you're not moving forward. That's what most people are doing with their lives. They confuse motion with progress, and the system rewards that confusion because when you're busy, you don't question. When you're tired, you don't reflect. When you're surviving, you don't strategize. So you keep going. Faster, harder, longer, but not further. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The system doesn't pay you for effort. It pays you for value. Effort is invisible. Value is measurable. Effort is common. Value is rare. That's why 2 people can work equally hard and earn completely different outcomes. One trades time for money. The other builds systems that produce money. One gets paid once. The other gets paid repeatedly. And the difference isn't how hard they work. It's how they think about work. As reflected in ideas similar to say, the divide is not about effort. It's about whether someone operates from survival or creation. One mindset consumes energy to stay afloat. The other uses energy to build leverage. This is where most people get stuck. They believe the answer is more hours, more hustle, more sacrifice. But the real answer is different. Different thinking, different strategy, different structure. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you will keep getting what you've always gotten. And that realization is where everything begins to change. But here's where it gets even deeper. Because the problem isn't just how you work, it's how you think about money itself. Chapter 4. The Survival Mindset versus the Expansion Mindset. There are 2 ways people approach life, 2 internal operating systems, 2 completely different realities. The survival mindset and the expansion mindset. And once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. The survival mindset wakes up thinking, how do I get through today? How do I avoid problems? How do I protect what I have? It focuses on safety, stability, control. It avoids risk. It delays decisions. It chooses comfort over growth. And on the surface, that seems responsible. But underneath, it's limiting because survival thinking is reactive. It responds to life. It doesn't shape it. Now compare that to the expansion mindset. It wakes up thinking, how do I grow today? How do I create opportunities? How do I multiply what I have? It focuses on possibility, leverage, long-term gain. It takes calculated risks. It invests in skills. It thinks beyond the present moment. And here's the key difference. The survival mindset protects the present. The expansion mindset builds the future. Both feel logical, but only one leads to escape. Because if your entire life is built around maintaining what you already have, you will never create more. And most people don't even realize they're stuck in survival mode. It feels normal. It feels safe. It feels necessary. But it's also the reason they never break through. They spend money to feel secure instead of investing to become free. They avoid discomfort. Instead of using it as a tool, they wait for the right time instead of creating it, and slowly, over time. That mindset builds a life of limitation, not because they lack ability, but because they're operating from fear. And fear is the most expensive habit you can have because it costs you opportunities you never even see. It costs you decisions you never make. It costs you growth you never experience. And the worst part, it feels justified. It feels smart. It feels safe. But safe is often the most dangerous place you can stay, because safe keeps you still. And stillness, in a world that rewards movement, is silent regression. So ask yourself honestly, are you protecting your life or building it? Because the answer to that question determines everything that follows. And in the next chapter, we're going to expose something even deeper, something that quietly drains your progress every single day, without you even noticing. You think it's the big mistakes that hold people back, the bad investments, the wrong job, the missed opportunity. But that's not what keeps most people poor. It's something quieter, something repetitive, something so normal that nobody questions it. Mate, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 5. The small leaks that drain your life. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water. You pour more in every day. You work harder. You earn more. But the bucket has tiny holes at the bottom, so no matter how much you pour in, it never fills. That's how most people live, not because they don't earn enough, but because they leak too much. And these leaks are not obvious. They're disguised as habits. Daily spending that feels harmless. Subscriptions you forgot about. Impulse purchases that give temporary relief. But it's deeper than money. It's energy leaks, attention leaks, focus leaks, scrolling for hours, comparing your life to others, consuming content that gives dopamine, but no direction. Every one of these is a leak, and individually they seem small, but over time they become your reality. Because success is not built in big moments. It's built in daily patterns, and failure works the same way. Small decisions, repeated daily, compounding silently. As seen in concepts echoed throughout, people don't stay stuck because of one big failure, but because they delay ownership of small daily actions that slowly define their direction. And here's the truth most people don't want to face. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your habits. If your habits leak time, money, and energy, you will always feel behind, even if you earn more, even if you try harder, because you're building on a broken system. And here's where it gets dangerous. These leaks feel normal. Everyone does them. So you justify them. It's just a little, I deserve this, I'll fix it later. But later never comes, because habits don't change with time. They change with awareness and discipline, which brings us to something most people avoid. Chapter 6. Discipline, the skill nobody wants, but everyone needs. Let's be honest, discipline is not exciting. It's not glamorous. It doesn't feel good in the moment. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the perfect moment. But here's the truth. If you rely on motivation, you will always be inconsistent. Because motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when every part of you wants to avoid it. And most people never build it, not because they can't, but because they negotiate with themselves. They say, I'll start tomorrow, I'll do it later, I just need a break. And one negotiation turns into a pattern that slowly becomes identity, as reflected in talking, delaying, and avoiding action creates the illusion of progress, while real progress only begins when you commit in silence and act consistently. And here's what you need to understand. Every time you choose comfort over action, you train your mind to stay weak. Every time you avoid difficulty, you reinforce limitation. Every time you delay, you push your future further away. Discipline is not about punishment. It's about alignment. It's about becoming the kind of person who does what they said they would do. And that identity changes everything. Because once you trust yourself, you move differently. You decide faster. You act with clarity. You stop waiting. You stop doubting. You stop hesitating. And that momentum starts to build something real. But here's the catch. Discipline alone is not enough. Because you can be disciplined and still move in the wrong direction. You can be consistent and still stay stuck. So the next question becomes, what should you actually be disciplined about? Because that answer is where the real shift begins. And it starts with something most people completely misunderstand. Time. Most people think they don't have enough time. But that's not true. They have time. They just don't have control over it. And that difference is everything. Chapter 7. Time is not what you think it is. You wake up, you go through your day, you feel busy. But at the end of it, you wonder where the time went. Sound familiar? That's because time isn't disappearing. It's being spent unconsciously. And unconscious time is the fastest way to stay stuck. Because time is not just hours on a clock. Time is direction. Where you place your time determines where your life goes. And most people never take control of that. They react to their day instead of designing it. They check their phone first thing in the morning. They respond to messages. They follow other people's priorities. And before they realize it, their day is gone. No progress, no growth, no movement forward, just activity. And activity is not the same as advancement, as reflected in principles similar to, even one focused hour a day can change everything. But most people never claim that hour because they give it away without realizing its value. Think about that. 1 hour, 60 minutes. That's all it takes to start shifting your life. But most people won't even protect that. They'll give it to scrolling, to distractions, to things that don't build anything. And then they say, I don't have time. No, you have time. You just don't own it. And until you own your time, you will never own your future. Because time is the raw material of your life. You can waste it, or you can build with it, but you cannot ignore it. So here's a simple truth. If you don't control your time, something else will. And that something is usually distraction. Which brings us to the next problem. Chapter 8. The Distraction Economy. We are living in the most distracted time in human history, and it's not an accident. Your attention is being hunted. Every app, every notification, every piece of content designed to pull you in, to keep you scrolling, watching, consuming, because your attention is valuable. And if you're not using it to build your life, someone else is using it to build theirs. That's the game. And most people are losing it without even realizing they're playing. You pick up your phone for a minute. That minute turns into 10. 10 turns into 30. 30 turns into hours. And by the end of the day, you've invested more time into other people's lives than your own. And here's the real cost. It's not just lost time. It's lost focus. Because every time your attention is pulled away, your ability to think deeply decreases, your clarity weakens, your discipline erodes, and over time, you become reactive instead of intentional. And reactive people never build anything meaningful, because building requires focus, long, uninterrupted focus, the kind that feels uncomfortable, the kind that most people avoid. But here's the truth. Distraction is the modern form of poverty, not because it takes your money, but because it takes your potential. It keeps you entertained while your life stays the same. It gives you stimulation without progress, and slowly, it rewires your brain to prefer easy over meaningful, fast over deep, comfort over growth. And that pattern is exactly what keeps people stuck. So if you want to escape, you don't just need more discipline, you need fewer distractions. You need to protect your attention like it matters, because it does. Your attention is your life. Where it goes, your future follows. And once you start reclaiming it, something powerful begins to happen. You start seeing opportunities others miss. You start thinking differently. You start moving with intention. And that's where everything begins to shift. But there's still one more invisible force that keeps people stuck longer than anything else, and it's not external, it's internal. It's the voice inside your head, the one that tells you what you can and cannot do. And in the next chapter, we're going to break it apart. There's a voice inside your head. It's quiet. Sometimes it sounds like logic. Sometimes it sounds like caution. Sometimes it sounds like truth. But most of the time, it's the very thing holding you back. Chapter 9. The internal dialogue that keeps you broke. You don't just live in the world. You live in your interpretation of the world. And that interpretation is shaped by the way you talk to yourself. Every decision you make, every risk you avoid, every opportunity you ignore, it all passes through one filter, your internal dialogue, and most people have never trained it. They let it run on default. And default thinking is built from past experiences, from fear, from failure, from limitation. So what does that sound like? I'm not ready. I don't have enough. That's too risky. People like me don't do that. And the most dangerous part, it feels reasonable. It feels smart. It feels like you're protecting yourself. But what you're really doing is reinforcing your limits, as reflected in ideas similar to, people rarely get more out of life because they don't believe they deserve more. So they never ask, never act, and never step forward. Think about that. If you don't believe something is possible for you, you won't even try. And if you don't try, you stay exactly where you are. So the real problem is not your situation. It's your interpretation of it. Because two people can face the same challenge and respond completely differently. One sees risk, the other sees opportunity. One sees limitation, the other sees possibility. And over time, those small differences in thinking create massive differences in results. So here's the shift. You don't need to silence your inner voice. You need to retrain it. You need to question it, challenge it, interrupt it, because not every thought you have is true. Some are inherited, some are conditioned, some are outdated. And if you don't update your thinking, you will keep living an outdated life. So the next time that voice says, I can't, pause. Ask yourself, is that true or is that familiar? Because familiarity is not truth. It's just repetition. And repetition can be rewritten. But rewriting your thinking requires something most people avoid: responsibility. Chapter 10. Ownership. The turning point most people skip. There is a moment in every transformation where everything becomes clear. Not easy, not comfortable, but clear. It's the moment you stop blaming and start owning. Owning your decisions, owning your habits, owning your results, not because everything is your fault, but because everything is your responsibility. And that shift changes everything. Because as long as you blame, you stay powerless. You wait. You hope. You depend on something outside of you to change. But when you take ownership, you take control. And control is where progress begins. As reinforced in principles similar to, people stay stuck because they delay ownership. They wait for life to change before they change, and that delay becomes their reality. Let's be honest. It's easier to blame the economy, your job, your past, other people, because blame gives you comfort. It tells you it's not your fault. But comfort is what keeps you stuck. Ownership, on the other hand, is uncomfortable. It forces you to look at your life honestly, to ask hard questions. How am I really spending my time? What habits are holding me back? Where am I avoiding responsibility? And those questions don't feel good, but they create clarity, and clarity creates direction. Because once you see the truth, you can't ignore it anymore. You can only act on it. And that's where the shift happens. Not when life gets easier, but when you get more honest. Because here's the truth. Your life changes the moment you decide it's your responsibility. Not your circumstances, not your environment. You. And that doesn't mean everything will change overnight. It won't. But your direction will. And direction is what determines everything. So if you're listening to this right now, this is your moment, your turning point. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because every day you delay ownership, you delay your escape, and in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how fast that escape happens. Something most people completely misunderstand. Value. Most people think money is the goal. It's not. Money is the result. And if you chase the result without understanding the cause, you will stay stuck. Chapter 11. Why value determines your income. Let's simplify everything. Income is not random. It's not magic. It's not luck. Income is a reflection of value. The value you create, the value you solve, the value you deliver to others. And most people never focus on that. They focus on effort, on hours, on tasks. But the market doesn't reward effort. It rewards usefulness. Think about it. A person digging a hole with a shovel might work harder than someone writing code. But who gets paid more? The one who creates more value. Because value scales. Effort doesn't. And this is where most people get trapped. They stay in roles where their effort is capped. Their income is tied to time. So no matter how hard they work, there's a limit, a ceiling, and they hit it again and again because they're playing the wrong game. They're trading time instead of building value. And here's the shift. If you want to earn more, you don't need to work more. You need to become more valuable. That means learning skills that solve real problems, understanding what people are willing to pay for, positioning yourself where your value can grow. Because the market pays for impact, not activity. And once you understand that, you stop asking, how can I work more? And you start asking, how can I create more value? That question changes everything. But there's another layer to this, because creating value is not enough. You also need to understand how to multiply it. Chapter 12, From Linear Income to Leverage. Most people earn money in a straight line. Time equals money. You work 1 hour, You get paid for 1 hour. That's linear, and linear systems have limits because there are only so many hours in a day. So no matter how hard you push, you eventually hit a ceiling. And that's where frustration begins because you feel like you're doing everything right, but nothing is scaling. That's because growth doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens through leverage. Leverage is what allows one unit of effort to produce multiple results. It's what separates survival from expansion. And most people never build it because they've been trained to think in hours, not systems. As echoed in ideas similar to the difference between staying stuck and escaping is not about small effort. It's about reaching a level of output that breaks the gravitational pull entirely. So what does leverage look like? It looks like skills that scale, digital skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills. It looks like systems, businesses, investments, assets that work even when you're not. It looks like positioning, being in environments where your output reaches more people. Because the goal is not to work forever. The goal is to build something that works for you. And that requires a shift from doing everything yourself to creating something that continues without you. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, learning, effort. But it's a different kind of effort. Not just working harder, but working smarter, more intentionally, more strategically. Because once you introduce leverage into your life, everything changes. Your time expands, your income potential grows, your options increase, and most importantly, you start moving differently. You stop thinking in days and start thinking in years. But here's where most people get stuck again. Because even when they understand this, they hesitate, they overthink, they delay. Why? Because of fear. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that fear down completely. Because until you understand it, you will always play smaller than you should. Fear. Not the loud kind, not the kind that makes you run. The quiet kind. The one that whispers. The one that sounds like logic. The one that keeps you exactly where you are. Chapter 13. The fear that disguises itself as logic. Most people don't say, "I'm afraid." They say, "I need more time. I need to be sure. I'll wait until things are stable." That's not strategy. That's fear. Wearing a suit. Because fear rarely shows up as panic. It shows up as hesitation, delay, overthinking. And the most dangerous part, it feels responsible. It feels smart. It feels like you're protecting yourself. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't protect your future. It protects your comfort. And comfort is where growth dies. Think about every opportunity you've ever hesitated on, every idea you didn't act on, every chance you let pass. Was it because you couldn't, or because you were afraid? Afraid of failure, afraid of judgment, afraid of losing what little you had. And those fears are real. They feel valid, but they come with a cost, a hidden cost. Because every time you choose safety over growth, you reinforce a pattern. You train your mind to avoid expansion, and over time, that becomes your identity. I'm just not the type of person who takes risks. But that's not who you are. That's who you practice being. And here's the shift. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you're at the edge of something new, something unfamiliar, something that could change your life. But only if you move through it. Because on the other side of fear is growth, opportunity, expansion. But most people never cross that line. They stay on the safe side, the predictable side, the crowded side. And that's why they stay stuck. Not because they lack ability, but because they avoid discomfort. So the question is not, am I afraid? Because you are. Everyone is. The real question is, am I willing to act anyway? Because that's where everything changes. And once you start acting despite fear, you unlock something powerful. Momentum. If you enjoy these audiobooks and want to support the channel, consider joining our private members community. Members get early access to new audiobooks and exclusive wealth lessons. Chapter 14, Momentum, the force that changes everything. Success is not one big decision. It's a series of small ones, made consistently, repeated daily, and those small decisions create momentum. Momentum is what makes things easier over time. It's what turns effort into progress. It's what builds confidence. But most people never reach it because they stop too early. They start something, feel resistance, and quit. They try again, face discomfort, and stop. So they stay in the hardest phase forever, the beginning, where everything feels slow, heavy, uncertain, and because they never push past that phase, they never experience what comes next. Flow, clarity, acceleration. Because here's the truth. The first steps are always the hardest, but they are also the most important. Because once you build momentum, everything changes. Decisions become easier. Actions become automatic. Progress becomes visible. And that visibility builds belief, which fuels more action, which builds more momentum, and suddenly you're not stuck anymore. You're moving forward. But here's where most people get it wrong. They wait to feel ready before they start. They wait for motivation, for clarity, for confidence. But momentum doesn't come from waiting. It comes from action. Imperfect action, messy action, uncertain action, because action creates clarity, not the other way around. So if you're waiting, stop, start moving, even if it's small, even if it's uncomfortable, because movement creates momentum, and momentum creates transformation. But there's one more shift you need to make, one that determines whether your momentum leads to growth or keeps you stuck in the same cycle. And it comes down to what you focus on. Because not all effort is equal. And in the next chapter, we're going to break down exactly where your focus needs to go. If you want to escape, you've been told to focus, but nobody ever told you what to focus on. So you try everything. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Some effort here, some effort there, and in the end, you're busy, but you're not progressing. Chapter 15, Focus, the multiplier. Most people waste focus. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, better. But most people live in constant distraction. They split their attention across too many things, too many goals, too many ideas, too many directions. And divided focus creates diluted results. Imagine trying to dig 10 holes at once. You'll stay shallow everywhere. But if you focus on one, you go deep. And depth is where results are found. As reflected in ideas similar to C, the people who win are not the ones doing the most. They are the ones who stay focused on their own growth long enough to build something real. And here's the truth. Focus is what turns effort into results. Without it, even hard work becomes wasted motion. So what should you focus on? Not everything, not what's trending, not what looks exciting. You focus on what moves your life forward, skills that increase your value, actions that build leverage, decisions that expand your future. Everything else? Noise. And here's the hard part. Focus requires sacrifice. You have to say no to distractions, to comfort, to things that don't align. And that's uncomfortable because saying no feels like missing out. But here's the shift. Every time you say no to distraction, you say yes to your future. And that trade is what separates those who stay stuck from those who escape. But focus alone is not enough, because you can focus on the wrong things. You can stay disciplined and still build nothing. So the next question becomes, what are you actually building? Because if you don't have direction, focus won't save you. It will just make you more efficient at staying stuck. And that's where clarity comes in. Chapter 16, Clarity, knowing what actually matters. Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're unclear. They don't know what they want. So they chase everything. And when you chase everything, you build nothing. Clarity is not just knowing your goal. It's understanding your direction, where you're going, why you're going there, what matters, and what doesn't. And without that, you drift, you react, you follow, instead of leading your own life. As echoed in principles similar to, people stay stuck because they never stop long enough to be honest about how they're living. And without that honesty, clarity never forms. So let's simplify this. If you want to escape low income, you don't need 10 goals. You need one clear direction. Increase your value and create leverage. That's it. Everything else supports that. If an action doesn't move you toward that, it's a distraction. If a habit doesn't support that, it's a leak. If a decision doesn't align with that, it's noise. And once you see that clearly, your life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. Because now you know what to do, what to avoid, what matters. And clarity removes hesitation. It cuts through overthinking. It gives you direction. And direction creates momentum. But there's still one thing that can destroy all of this. Even if you have focus, even if you have clarity, even if you're taking action, there is one habit that can quietly undo everything. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. Comparison. And in the next chapter, we're going to expose why comparing your life to others is one of the fastest ways to stay stuck. You look at someone else's life, and suddenly yours feels smaller. Not because it is, but because you compared it. Chapter 17, The Trap of Comparison. Comparison is quiet. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels natural. You scroll, you watch, you observe, and without even realizing it, you start measuring their success, their progress, their lifestyle against your own. And in that moment, you lose focus, because comparison shifts your attention away from your path and onto someone else's. And that shift is costly, because the moment you compare, you stop building, you start doubting, you start questioning. Am I behind? Am I doing enough? Why aren't I there yet? And those questions don't create progress. They create pressure. As reflected in ideas similar to EA, people lose momentum when they stop focusing on themselves and start watching others. Because attention divided is growth delayed. And here's the truth. Comparison is the fastest way to disconnect from your own progress. Because you're no longer measuring yourself against your potential. You're measuring yourself against someone else's timeline, someone else's journey, someone else's starting point. And that's not fair, because you don't see the full picture. You don't see their struggles, their failures, their sacrifices. You only see the highlight, and you compare it to your reality. and that creates distortion. It makes you feel behind even when you're moving forward, and that feeling kills momentum. So here's the shift. Stop comparing and start tracking. Track your own growth, your own progress, your own improvements, because the only comparison that matters is who you were yesterday versus who you are today. And when you focus on that, you regain control, you regain clarity, you regain momentum, because now you're building your life, not reacting to someone else's. But there's another trap, even deeper than comparison, one that doesn't just slow you down, it keeps you silent, invisible, stuck in potential. And it's something most people struggle with their entire lives. To Chapter 18, the fear of being seen. You want more. You want to grow. You want to build something bigger. But there's a part of you that hesitates, not because you don't know what to do, but because you're afraid of being seen doing it, afraid of judgment, of criticism, of failure in public. So what do? You stay small, you stay quiet, you delay action, you tell yourself, I'll start when I'm ready, I'll do it when it's perfect, I'll move when I'm sure. But here's the truth, perfection is just fear, disguised as preparation. Because if you wait until everything is perfect, you will never start. And if you never start, you never grow. As echoed in ideas similar to, real progress doesn't come from talking, waiting, or explaining. It comes from acting quietly and consistently, even when no one is watching. But here's the paradox. You're afraid of being seen failing, but staying invisible is the real failure, because growth requires exposure. It requires you to step out, to try, to risk being wrong, to risk being judged, and that's uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because every level of growth requires a new level of visibility, a new level of courage, a new level of self-trust. So if you're waiting, stop. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. You need to show up, even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, even if it's uncomfortable, because action builds confidence, not the other way around. And once you take that step, something shifts. You realize it's not as scary as you thought, and that realization unlocks the next level. But there's one final piece you need to understand before everything starts coming together. Because even with action, even with focus, even with clarity, there is one principle that determines whether your efforts actually pay off. And most people overlook it completely: consistency. And in the next chapter, we're going to break down why consistency is the real secret behind every transformation. Consistency. Not intensity, not talent, not luck. Consistency. The quiet force that most people underestimate, and the one that determines everything. Chapter 19. Consistency. The real divider between stuck and free. Let's be honest. Most people don't have a knowledge problem. They know what to do. Wake up earlier, learn new skills, save money, invest in themselves. They know, but they don't do it consistently. They start strong. Day 1, motivated. Day 2, focused. Day 3, disciplined. Then life happens. They get tired, distracted, overwhelmed, and they stop. Not forever, just long enough to lose momentum. And once momentum is gone, everything feels harder again. So they start over, again and again and again. This is the cycle most people live in, not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. As reflected in ideas similar to, discipline isn't about doing things when you feel like it. It's about showing up, especially when you don't, because that's what builds real change. And here's the truth. Consistency beats intensity every time. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to go all in every day. You just need to show up again and again and again. Because small actions, repeated daily, create massive results over time. That's how habits are built. That's how skills are developed. That's how lives are transformed, not in one big moment, but in thousands of small ones. And here's the shift. Stop aiming for perfect. Start aiming for consistent, because perfection is fragile. Consistency is unstoppable. And once you build it, everything compounds. Your skills grow, your confidence builds, your results start showing, and slowly you begin to see something new. Progress. Real progress. But there's another layer to this, because consistency alone is not enough. You also need patience. The chapter 20, patience, the skill that makes consistency work. We live in a fast world. Everything is instant. Food, entertainment, information. So we expect results to be instant too. But growth doesn't work that way. Real progress is slow, invisible at first. You work, you improve, you stay consistent, and nothing seems to happen. No big results, no major breakthroughs, just effort. And this is where most people quit, because they don't see immediate reward. They think, it's not working, I'm wasting time. Maybe this isn't for me. But here's what they don't understand. The biggest results come after the longest periods of invisibility. Growth compounds, slow at first, then suddenly exponential, but only if you stay in the game long enough. As echoed in principles similar to 1 hour a day may not feel like much in the moment, but over time it becomes transformation. Think about that. 1 hour, every day, for a year. That's over 300 hours of focused growth. Do you think that changes nothing? It changes everything, but only if you stay consistent, and only if you're patient enough to let it compound. Because patience is not waiting, it's trusting the process while doing the work. And that's hard, because you don't see immediate results. You don't get instant feedback. You just keep going. And that requires belief. Belief in your direction, belief in your effort, belief in yourself. And once you combine consistency with patience, you become unstoppable. Because now, you don't quit early. You don't get discouraged easily. You don't chase shortcuts. You build step by step, day by day, until one day everything changes. But before that happens, there's one final trap you need to avoid, one that stops people right before they break through. And it's something that feels productive, but actually keeps you stuck. Overthinking. And in the next chapter, we're going to break it down completely. Because if you don't control it, it will control you. You think you need more time to think, more time to plan, more time to prepare, more time to be sure. But what if thinking is the very thing keeping you stuck? Dear viewer, share your success story even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comment section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 21. Overthinking, the illusion of progress. Overthinking feels productive. You're analyzing. You're considering options. You're trying to make the right decision. But here's the truth. Overthinking is not progress. It's delay, because while you're thinking, you're not moving, you're not testing, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're stuck in a loop. What if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I make the wrong move? And those questions feel important, but they don't move your life forward. They keep you safe. And safe is where nothing changes, as reflected in ideas similar to people stay stuck not because they lack opportunity, but because they hesitate, hold back, and never take action on what they already know they need to do. Here's the shift. Clarity does not come from thinking. It comes from doing. You don't figure everything out before you start. You figure things out as you go, through action, through experience, through mistakes, because mistakes teach faster than thoughts ever will. But most people avoid that. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want to know it will work before they try. And that mindset keeps them stuck forever because there are no guarantees, only decisions. So instead of asking, what's the perfect move? Start asking, what's the next move? Because progress is not about perfection. It's about direction. And direction comes from action. So if you've been thinking, planning, waiting, this is your signal. Move, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, because action breaks overthinking. And once you start moving, you unlock something powerful. Confidence. Chapter 22. Confidence, built, not given. Most people think confidence comes first, that you need to feel ready before you act. But that's backwards. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from it. Confidence is built through proof. Proof that you can act. Proof that you can handle discomfort. Proof that you can figure things out. And that proof only comes from doing, not thinking, not waiting, not preparing forever. Doing, as echoed in principles similar to, people don't follow words. They respond to certainty, and certainty is built when your actions align with what you say. Think about it. Every time you take action, even small action, you send a message to yourself. I can do this. And that message builds confidence. But every time you hesitate, every time you delay, you send the opposite message, I'm not ready. And over time, that becomes your identity. So if you want to build confidence, you don't wait. You act. You step forward. You try. You fail. You adjust. You keep going. And slowly, that fear you once felt starts to fade. Not because it disappears, but because you've proven you can move despite it. And that's real confidence, not arrogance, not ego, but quiet certainty. The kind that comes from experience. And once you have that, you move differently. You decide faster, you act quicker, you hesitate less. And that momentum starts compounding. But there's one final shift, the one that brings everything together, the one that determines whether you stay where you are or finally break through. Identity. Chapter 23. Identity. Becoming the person who escapes. You don't get what you want in life. You get what you are. Your habits, your decisions, your standards all come from your identity. The way you see yourself. And most people still see themselves as stuck. I'm bad with money. I'm not disciplined. I'm just trying to get by. And those beliefs shape their actions because you will always act in alignment with who you believe you are. So if you believe you're someone who struggles, you will continue to struggle, not because you have to, but because you expect to. And expectation drives behavior. So here's the shift. Stop focusing on what you want and start focusing on who you need to become. The person who escapes low income thinks differently, acts differently, moves differently. They don't wait. They don't avoid. They don't settle. They build consistently, patiently, relentlessly. And once you start stepping into that identity, everything changes. Because now you're not forcing yourself to act. You're acting in alignment with who you are becoming. And that is powerful because identity-driven action is sustainable. It doesn't rely on motivation. It doesn't depend on mood. It becomes who you are. And once that happens, escape is no longer a question. It becomes inevitable. But before we close, there's one final truth you need to hear, one that ties everything together, one that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Chapter 24. The decision that changes everything. There is no perfect moment, no perfect plan, no perfect timing. There is only a decision, a real one, the kind you don't go back on, the kind that shifts your direction completely, because everything you've heard so far means nothing without a decision to take ownership, a decision to act despite fear, a decision to stay consistent, a decision to build something better, because without that, you will keep listening, keep thinking, keep waiting, and nothing will change. But the moment you decide, everything shifts, not instantly, but permanently, because now you're moving with intention, you're acting with purpose, you're building with clarity, and that decision becomes the foundation of your new life. So if you're listening right now, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Decide, because your future is waiting on it. And in the final chapter, we bring it all together. You've made it this far. That matters, because most people don't even get here. They don't question. They don't reflect. They don't challenge their patterns. They stay where they are, and they call it life. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. And now it's time to close this journey with the one truth that matters most. Chapter 25. Escape is not given. It is built. There is no rescue coming, no perfect opportunity waiting, no moment where everything suddenly aligns. There is only what you choose to build, day by day, decision by decision, action by action. And that might sound heavy, but it's actually freedom. Because if no one is coming to save you, that means no one is stopping you either. You're not stuck. You're not limited. You're not trapped. You are untrained, unfocused, undirected, undisciplined. And the moment you change that, everything changes, because escape is not about luck. It's about alignment, aligning your habits with your goals, aligning your actions with your future, aligning your identity with who you want to become. And once those align, progress becomes inevitable. Let's bring it all together. You learned that poverty is not just about money. It's about patterns. You learned that hard work alone is not enough. It needs direction. You learned that your mindset shapes your reality, and your habits shape your results. You learned that time is your most valuable asset, and attention is your greatest weapon. You learned that fear is not your enemy. Avoidance is. You learned that consistency beats intensity, and patience unlocks compounding. You learned that overthinking delays your life, and action creates clarity. You learned that confidence is built, not given. And most importantly, you learned that your identity determines everything. This wasn't just an audiobook, it was a mirror, a reflection of where you are and where you could be. And now, there's only one question left. What are you going to do with it? Because information without action is just entertainment. And this was never meant to entertain you. It was meant to wake you up. So here's what I want you to do. Make this real, not tomorrow, not someday, now. Pick one thing, one action, one shift, and commit to it. Start small, but start seriously. Because small actions, repeated consistently, create massive change. And if something in this audiobook resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment, share the moment that hit you the hardest. Because clarity grows when you express it. And if you're serious about changing your life, hit subscribe. Not for content, but for accountability, for consistency, for staying connected to a path that actually moves you forward. And if you know someone who's stuck, someone who's trying, someone who needs this, share this with them. Because sometimes one message can change everything, and maybe this is that message. Now remember this line, let it stay with you. You don't escape low income by wishing for a better life. You escape by becoming the person who builds one. And once you become that person, there is no going back. Only forward, always forward. We're not done yet. Because what you just heard is not meant to end here. It's meant to begin something. Chapter 26. The first step most people never take. You've listened, you've understood, maybe even felt something shift inside you. That quiet realization, that's me. And in that moment, you're standing at a crossroads. Not physically, mentally, emotionally. Because now you see things differently. You see the patterns. You see the habits. You see the truth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's the danger. Most people stop here. They feel inspired. They feel motivated. They feel ready. And then they do nothing. They go back to their routine, back to their habits, back to the same life. And slowly that clarity fades. That awareness disappears. And they return to the same cycle they just recognized. That's why this moment matters. Because this is where most people lose, not at the beginning, but right here at the edge of change. So let's make this real right now, not later, not tomorrow, now. Ask yourself, what is one thing I know I need to change? Not 10 things, not everything, just one. One habit, one decision, one pattern, and commit to it. Because the first step is not about doing everything, it's about doing something real, something consistent, something that breaks the pattern. Because once you take that first step, you're no longer thinking, you're acting. And action is where transformation begins. But chapter 27. Why most people go back to their old life change is uncomfortable. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally. Because when you start changing, you start separating. Separating from your old habits, your old thinking. Sometimes even your old environment. And that creates tension because familiarity feels safe. Even if it's limiting, even if it's keeping you stuck. It's known, and the unknown feels risky. So what do most people do? They go back to comfort, back to routine, back to what they know. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar, and that's the trap. Familiar does not mean right. It means repeated. So if you want to escape, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to accept that growth feels strange, that progress feels uncertain, that change feels difficult, because that's how you know you're moving. And here's the truth. If it feels uncomfortable, you're probably doing something right. Because comfort is what kept you stuck, and discomfort is what moves you forward. So the next time you feel resistance, don't run from it, recognize it, lean into it, because that's the edge, the place where growth happens. Chapter 28. The people around you will not understand this part is important, because nobody talks about it. When you start changing, not everyone will support you. Some will question you. Some will doubt you. Some will even discourage you, not because they want to hurt you, but because your growth challenges their comfort. It reminds them of what they're not doing, and that makes them uncomfortable. So they project. They say things like, "Why are you doing all this? Just relax. You're doing too much." And if you're not careful, you'll listen. You'll slow down. You'll shrink back to fit into a space you've already outgrown. And that's how people stay stuck. They choose acceptance over growth. But here's the shift. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey, and that's okay. You're not building your life for approval. You're building it for alignment, for freedom, for something greater. So if people don't understand, let them. You don't need everyone's support. You need your own commitment, because at the end of the day, this is your life, your path, your responsibility. Chapter 29. The long game. Most people ignore. We live in a world of short-term thinking, quick wins, fast results, instant gratification, but real success is a long game, and most people don't play it because it requires patience, discipline, vision, things that don't feel rewarding immediately. So they chase shortcuts, quick money, easy wins, temporary success, and they stay stuck. Because shortcuts don't build foundations, they build illusions, and illusions eventually collapse. But when you play the long game, everything changes. You stop chasing quick results. You start building lasting ones. You invest in skills, in knowledge, in systems, things that grow over time, things that compound, and that's the key. The long game rewards those who stay consistent long enough, not the fastest, not the smartest, but the most consistent. Because while others quit, you continue. While others chase trends, you build foundations, and over time, that difference becomes massive, but only if you stay in the game. Beta Chapter 30. This is where you separate from the 95% you've heard it. You've felt it. You understand it now. Why most people stay poor. Why they stay stuck. Why they never escape. And now, you're standing at the same line, the same decision point, the same moment where most people stop, where they go back, where they choose comfort over change. And this is where you separate. Not by talent, not by luck, but by decision, by action, by consistency. Because here's the truth. The difference between the 95% and the 5% is not knowledge. It's execution. And now you know enough, more than enough. So the question is not, can you do it? The question is, will you? Because everything you need is already in your hands. Your time, your focus, your decisions, and what you do with them will define your future. So take a breath and decide. Right now, not later, because this moment is where your new life begins. And it begins with what you do next. You've reached the edge again, not the end, another edge, because growth doesn't end with one realization. It deepens, it sharpens, it demands more from you. Chapter 31, the discipline of staying awake. There is a difference between waking up once and staying awake. Most people wake up for a moment. They hear something powerful. They feel something shift. They see their life clearly, and then they fall back asleep, not physically, mentally. They return to autopilot, to old habits, to unconscious living, and that's the real danger, because awareness without maintenance fades, slowly, quietly, until you're back where you started. So the real skill is not waking up. It's staying awake, staying aware of your decisions, your habits, your direction, every single day. Because the world will try to pull you back into distraction, into comfort, into routine. And if you're not careful, it will succeed. So you need a system, a way to stay conscious, a daily reset, a moment where you check in with yourself and ask, am I building or drifting? Because that question keeps you aligned, it keeps you sharp, it keeps you moving forward. Tita. Chapter 32. Building a life that supports your growth. You cannot build a new life with an old environment. It doesn't work, because your environment shapes your behavior, your habits, your thinking, your standards. So if your environment stays the same, your results will too. That's why this step matters. You have to start designing your life intentionally, not perfectly, but consciously. What do you consume daily? Who do you spend time with? What do you give your attention to? Because all of it is shaping you. And if it's not aligned with your growth, it's holding you back. So make adjustments, small ones. Remove distractions. Create space. Build routines that support your direction. Because when your environment supports you, discipline becomes easier. Consistency becomes natural. Progress becomes sustainable. Chapter 33. You will doubt yourself. Keep moving. Anyway, there will be days when you question everything. Days when you feel stuck. Days when you feel behind. Days when nothing seems to be working. That's normal. That's part of the process. Because growth is not a straight line. It's messy, unpredictable, sometimes frustrating, and in those moments, doubt shows up. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I'm not capable. Maybe I should stop. And that voice will feel convincing. But here's what you need to remember. Doubt is part of the journey, not a signal to quit. It's a test, a moment that asks, are you committed or just interested? Because interest fades, commitment stays. So when doubt appears, acknowledge it, but don't obey it. Keep moving, even if it's slow, even if it's small, because progress is still progress. Chapter 34. You are closer than you think. This is something most people never realize. They quit right before things change, right before the breakthrough, right before the results, right before the shift. Because they can't see it yet. They don't feel it. They don't have proof. So they assume nothing is happening, and they stop. But what they don't see is that everything was building beneath the surface. Skills improving, habits forming, momentum growing, all invisible until suddenly it's not. And that's how breakthroughs happen, not gradually, but all at once, after a long period of quiet work. So if you feel like nothing is changing, that might be the moment everything is about to, but only if you keep going. Chapter 35. The final reminder. Let's slow this down for a moment. Take a breath and remember this. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to move fast. You just need to move forward. Consistently, intentionally, relentlessly. Because this is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were always capable of being. And that version of you is not far away. It's built through your next decision, your next action, your next step. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Don't delay it. Just move, because every step forward is a step away from the life you no longer want and a step toward the life you're building. But now, one final thing. If this audiobook spoke to you, if something inside you shifted, don't let it stay here. Write it down. What hit you the hardest? What are you going to change? Because clarity becomes real when you put it into words. And if you're committed to this path, stay connected, stay accountable, because growth is easier when you don't walk it alone. And if you know someone who needs this, share it. Because sometimes one message, one realization can change the direction of a life. And maybe that life is yours or someone close to you. Now remember this: you don't escape poverty by working harder in the same life. You escape by building a different one. And that process starts now, always now. You're still here. And that says something, because by now, most people would have stopped, not because they don't care, but because this level of truth requires something from them, and most people aren't ready to give it. But you are still listening. So let's go deeper. Chapter 36, The Cost of Staying the Same. We talk a lot about the cost of change, the effort, the discomfort, the uncertainty, but nobody talks about the cost of staying the same. And that cost is far greater, because staying the same is not neutral. It's not safe. It's not stable. It's expensive. Every day you stay the same. You pay with time. Time you don't get back. Time you could have used to build. Time you could have used to grow. Every day you delay, you compound regret. Quietly, slowly, until one day you look back and realize nothing changed. And that realization is heavy, because deep down you knew you could have done more. You knew you had potential. You knew you had time, but you didn't act. And that's the real cost. Not failure, but unused potential. So let's flip the question. Instead of asking, what will it cost me to change? Ask, what will it cost me if I don't? Because that answer will wake you up faster than anything else. Chapter 37, You Don't Need Permission. A lot of people are waiting for approval, waiting for validation, waiting for someone to tell them you're ready. But here's the truth. No one is coming to give you permission, not your boss, not your family, not the world. Because your life is not their responsibility, it's yours. And waiting for permission is just another form of delay, another way to avoid taking action. Because if no one gives you the green light, you can always say, I was waiting. But waiting is the slowest way to waste your life. So here's your permission. You don't need it. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need to be approved. You choose yourself. You decide, you act, and that's where power begins. Chapter 38, You Will Outgrow Your Old Life. This part will feel strange at first, because as you grow, things will change, not just inside you, around you. Your habits will change. Your priorities will shift. Your standards will rise. And with that, some things won't fit anymore. Conversations that once felt normal will feel empty. Environments that once felt comfortable will feel limiting. Even people may feel different. And that can be uncomfortable, because growth creates distance, not always physical, but mental, emotional, directional. And if you're not prepared, you'll shrink yourself to stay connected. But that's the mistake, because if you shrink, you stop growing. So here's the truth. You are allowed to outgrow your old life. You are allowed to evolve, to change, to move in a different direction. And that doesn't make you wrong. It makes you real, because growth requires change, and change requires letting go. Chapter 39, The Quiet Power of Self-Respect. Everything you do comes back to one thing: how you see yourself, your standards, your habits, your decisions. All of it reflects your level of self-respect, because when you respect yourself, you move differently. You stop tolerating what drains you. You stop accepting less than you deserve. You stop making excuses, not because someone told you to, but because, you expect more from yourself. And that expectation changes everything, because now discipline is not forced. It's natural. Consistency is not a struggle. It's a standard, and progress becomes inevitable. So if you want to change your life, start here. Raise your standards, not for others, for yourself, because the way you treat yourself sets the tone for everything else. Chapter 40. The life you want is built. Daily, let's bring this down to something simple. You don't build a new life in one big moment. You build it daily, in small decisions, quiet actions, consistent habits. And most of those moments won't feel significant. They won't feel powerful. They won't feel life-changing, but they are, because they add up. Day after day, week after week, until one day you look at your life and it's different, not because of one decision, but because of hundreds. So don't wait for a big moment. Create small ones every day, because those small moments are where your future is built. And now, this is where we pause, not because the journey ends, but because it continues with you, not listening, not thinking, but acting. Because everything you've heard, everything you've felt, everything that resonated means nothing unless you do something with it. So take this with you. Your life does not change when you understand more. It changes when you do more with what you understand. And now, it's your move. You're still moving. And that matters more than you realize. Because most people don't continue at this point. They stop when it gets repetitive. They stop when it gets quiet. They stop when there's no excitement left. But this, right here, this is where real change happens. Chapter 41. When it gets boring, that's when it starts working. Let's be real. Growth is not exciting every day. It's not always motivating. It's not always inspiring. Some days, it's boring, repetitive, predictable, quiet. And that's exactly where most people quit. Because they've been conditioned to chase excitement, to chase dopamine, to chase something that feels good. But real progress doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like routine, and routine is where discipline lives. Because when something becomes boring, it means it's becoming a habit. And habits are what change your life. So the next time you feel like, this is too repetitive, this is not exciting anymore, good, that means it's working. That means you're building something real, because excitement fades, but structure lasts. Chapter 42. You are rewriting your default right now. You're doing something powerful. You're not just learning, you're rewiring, because everything you've done up to this point has created your current default. The way you think, the way you react, the way you decide, that's your baseline. And most people never change it. They live their entire lives on autopilot, repeating the same patterns the same decisions, the same results. But you're interrupting that. You're creating a new default, a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new standard, and at first, it feels unnatural, uncomfortable, because it's new. But over time, it becomes you. That's how transformation works, not instantly, but gradually, until one day, the things that once felt hard feel normal, and that's when you know you've changed. Chapter 43. The power of saying no. This might be one of the most important shifts, because success is not just about what you do. It's about what you refuse, what you ignore, what you eliminate, because every yes costs you something: time, energy, focus. So if you say yes to everything, you build nothing. You stay scattered, distracted, overwhelmed. But when you start saying no, everything sharpens, your focus improves, your direction becomes clear, your progress accelerates. So start asking, is this moving me forward or holding me back? If it's not aligned, say no, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels difficult. Because every time you say no to what doesn't matter, you protect what does. Chapter 44. You don't need more. You need better. Most people think the solution is more time, more money, more opportunities. But that's not the real answer. Because if you don't change how you operate, more won't fix anything. It will just amplify your current habits. So instead of asking for more, start asking for better. Better decisions, better habits, better focus, because better creates more, but more does not create better. And once you understand that, you stop chasing quantity and start building quality, and that shift changes everything. Chapter 45. This is the work no one sees. There's a part of this journey that no one talks about. The quiet work, the unseen effort, the days when nothing looks different, but everything is changing. Inside you, your mindset, your discipline, your standards. No one sees that. No one applauds it. No one rewards it immediately. But that's the work. That builds everything else, because what people see later is built in silence. So don't get discouraged if no one notices, if no one recognizes your effort, because this is not for them, it's for you, for your future, for the life you're building. Chapter 46. You are not starting over. You are starting smarter. There will be moments when you feel like you've lost progress, like you've gone backwards, like you have to start again. But here's the truth. You're not starting over. You're starting smarter, because now you know more, you see more, you understand more, and that awareness gives you an advantage. So don't look at setbacks as failure. Look at them as feedback, information, guidance, because every mistake teaches you something, and if you use that, you grow faster, stronger, smarter. Chapter 47. The version of you that already exists. There is a version of you that already lives the life you want, more disciplined, more focused, more confident. That version exists, not in the future, but in potential, inside you. And every time you make a better decision, you step closer to that version. Every time you act with discipline, you align with that version. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you become that version. So stop thinking of it as something far away. It's not. It's built through your actions right now. Chapter 48. Don't rush. Just don't stop. You don't need to rush this process. You don't need to force results. You don't need to compare your timeline. You just need to keep going. Because slow progress is still progress, and consistent progress becomes unstoppable. So don't worry about speed. Focus on direction, because direction is what determines where you end up. Chapter 49. You are responsible for what happens next. Let's be clear. You've heard everything you need to hear. You understand the patterns. You see the traps. You know the path. So now, it's on you, not the system, not your past, not your situation. You. Because awareness comes with responsibility, and what you do next defines everything. So choose carefully, act intentionally, move consistently, because your future is being built right now. Chapter 50, the line that changes everything. Let this stay with you, not just today, but every day. You don't escape by doing something once. You escape by becoming someone different. And that process is already happening right now, with every decision you make. So keep going. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Stay aware. Because you're not the same person who started this journey. And if you continue, you won't recognize yourself a year from now in the best way possible. Now, move, because this story is no longer something you listen to. It's something you live. You made it further than most, and now you're entering the phase where everything becomes real. Because up until this point, you've been understanding. Now, you're becoming. Chapter 51. The day you stop negotiating with yourself. There's a moment, small, quiet, almost invisible, where everything changes, not because something big happened, but because something inside you shifted. You stop negotiating. No more. I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow. I'll wait until I feel ready. That voice, that used to control you, loses its power, and you replace it with something stronger. Decision. Because negotiation is the habit that keeps people stuck. Every time you negotiate with discomfort, you lose. Every time you bargain with discipline, you delay. Every time you choose later, you reinforce the life you're trying to escape. So, the shift is simple. No more negotiation. You said you'd do it, you do it. You planned it, you execute it. You committed, you follow through. No discussion, no delay, no excuses. And that level of self-respect creates a new version of you, one that doesn't break promises to themselves. And once you reach that point, everything accelerates. To chapter 52, the silent gap between knowing and doing. Let's confront something real. There's a gap, a dangerous one, between knowing and doing. You know what to do. You've heard it. You've understood it. You've even agreed with it. But knowledge does not change your life. Execution does. And most people live in that gap. They consume information. They feel inspired, but they never apply it. And over time, that becomes a habit. Learning without action, thinking without movement, understanding without change. And that habit is one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck. Because it feels productive, but it produces nothing. So here's the shift. Close the gap. Take what you know and apply it immediately, not perfectly, but consistently. Because applied knowledge is power. Everything else is noise. To chapter 53. The moment you realize no one is watching. At the beginning, you worry about people, what they think, what they say, how they see you. But as you grow, something changes. You realize something powerful. No one is watching, not the way you think. People are busy with their own lives, their own problems, their own thoughts. And that realization frees you. because now you don't move for approval. You don't act for validation. You move for yourself. And that shift removes hesitation. It removes fear. It removes pressure because now you're not performing. You're building, and building doesn't require an audience. Chapter 54. You start seeing opportunities everywhere. Once your mindset shifts, your vision changes. You start seeing things differently. Problems become opportunities. Situations become lessons. Time becomes valuable. You stop looking at life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you can shape. And that's powerful because now you're not reacting. You're creating. And creation is where growth lives because every opportunity starts as something small, something most people ignore. But now you notice it. You act on it. You build from it. And over time, those small opportunities turn into something big. Chapter 55, you stop waiting to feel ready. This is a big one because readiness is a myth. You will never feel fully ready. There will always be uncertainty, always be doubt, always be risk. So if you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. But once you understand that, you stop waiting. You start moving because you realize readiness comes from action, not before it. You don't become confident, then act. You act, then become confident. And that shift removes delay. It removes hesitation. It removes excuses because now you move first and figure it out along the way. Chapter 56. The compound effect becomes visible. At first, nothing seems to change. You're working, you're improving, you're staying consistent, but results? Slow, almost invisible. And then something happens. You start noticing small wins, progress, improvement, momentum, and those small wins start stacking faster, more frequently. Until one day, it's obvious. Your life is changing not because of one big decision, but because of everything you've been doing. Consistently, that's the compound effect. And once it becomes visible, it reinforces everything. Your belief grows, your confidence increases, your momentum accelerates, and now you're not hoping anymore. You're seeing it. Chapter 57. You realize this is just the beginning. Here's the truth most people don't expect. There is no finish line, no moment where everything is done. Because growth doesn't end. It evolves. You reach one level and see another. You solve one problem and discover a new challenge. And that's not a bad thing. That's life. Because the goal is not to arrive. It's to become, to keep growing, to keep building, to keep evolving. And once you understand that, you stop chasing an endpoint and start enjoying the process. Chapter 58. You are no longer the same person. Take a moment. Think back to who you were before this, before the awareness, before the clarity, before the shift, and compare that to who you are now. Something has changed. Maybe small, maybe subtle, but real. You see things differently. You think differently. You move differently. And that's how transformation starts. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, consistent, real. And if you continue, that change will grow until one day you won't recognize your old life. Chapter 59. The final commitment. This is where it matters. Not what you've heard, not what you've felt, but what you decide right now. Because this is the moment where most people fade. They go back, they forget, they drift. But you don't have to. You can choose differently. You can commit, not emotionally, but practically, to your habits, to your growth, to your future, because commitment is what separates intention from reality. Chapter 60. Now it's on you. There is nothing left to add. No new information, no hidden secret. You have everything, the awareness, the understanding, the direction. Now it's execution, because at the end of the day, your life will not change because you listen to this. It will change because of what you do after it. So take this moment, make it real, decide, act, move, because everything you want is on the other side of consistent action, and that journey starts with your next step. Now go and build the life you know you're capable of. You're still here. And now you've crossed into something most people never reach. Not just awareness, not just understanding, but repetition of truth. And repetition is what creates identity. Chapter 61. The moment you stop looking back. There comes a point where you stop romanticizing your old life. You stop missing the comfort. You stop justifying the habits. You stop thinking, maybe it wasn't that bad. Because now you see clearly, you see the cost, the stagnation, the patterns that kept you small. And once you truly see that, you don't want to go back. Not because you can't, but because you won't. That's a powerful place to be. Because now your past no longer pulls you. Your future pulls you forward. Chapter 62. You start protecting your energy. At the beginning, you gave your energy to everything, every distraction, every conversation, every unnecessary thought. But now, you're more selective. You realize something important. Your energy is limited. So where you place it matters. You stop engaging in things that drain you. You stop entertaining distractions. You stop reacting to everything. And instead, you become intentional, focused, disciplined, because now you understand energy spent on the wrong things is progress lost. So you protect it like it matters. Because it does. Chapter 63. You become comfortable being different. At first, you wanted to fit in, to stay aligned with everyone else, to move at the same pace, to think the same way. But now, that changes. You realize fitting in is what kept you stuck. So you stop trying. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your choices. You stop shrinking to match others. And instead, you embrace being different. Because different is what creates change. Different habits, different thinking, different standards. And those differences separate you from the life you used to live. Chapter 64. You no longer chase motivation. Motivation used to control you. If you felt good, you acted. If you didn't, you stopped. But now, you've moved beyond that because you understand motivation is unreliable. Discipline is dependable. So you stop waiting to feel like it. You act anyway, on good days, on bad days, on days when nothing feels right. Because now, you're not driven by emotion. You're driven by commitment. And that is what creates consistency. Chapter 65. You start thinking long-term automatically. At the beginning, everything was short-term, quick wins, immediate results, fast gratification. But now, your thinking shifts. You start asking, where will this take me in a year? In 5 years? In 10? And that question changes your decisions. You stop choosing what feels good now and start choosing what builds your future. And that shift is what separates those who stay stuck from those who build something real. Chapter 66. You become harder to distract. Distraction used to pull you easily. A notification, a message, a random thought, and suddenly your focus was gone. But now, it's different. You notice distractions, but you don't follow them. You stay centered, locked in, because you understand every distraction has a cost, and you're no longer willing to pay it. Or chapter 67. You trust yourself more. This is one of the biggest changes. You start trusting yourself, not because everything is perfect, but because you've proven something. You act, you follow through, you stay consistent, and that proof builds trust. So now, when you make a decision, you don't second guess it. You execute because you know you can handle it, and that trust changes how you move. Chapter 68. You realize you were never stuck. Here's something powerful. You were never stuck. Not truly. You were unaware, unfocused, undirected, but not stuck. Because the moment you changed your thinking, your actions changed. And the moment your actions changed, your direction changed. So it was never about being trapped. It was about not seeing the way out. And now you see it clearly. Chapter 69. The final truth, let this settle deep, because this is what everything comes down to. Your life is a reflection of your daily decisions, not your intentions, not your thoughts, not your plans, your decisions, what you do, what you avoid, what you repeat. And once you understand that, you stop waiting, you stop hoping, you start choosing intentionally, consistently, powerfully. Chapter 70. The life you build from here. This is it. Not an ending, a beginning. Because everything you've heard, everything you've understood, everything you've felt now turns into action. Real action, daily action, because this is no longer an idea, it's your life. And from this point forward, every decision matters, every habit counts, every step builds something. So build carefully, build intentionally, build relentlessly, because the life you want is not far away. It's being created right now with what you choose to do next. Now, one final line to carry with you. You don't escape the life you hate by wishing for better days. You escape it by building better habits. And those habits start now, always now. You're still here. And now, something has shifted deeper than before. Not just your thoughts, not just your habits, your standard. Chapter 71. You raise the standard, or you stay the same. There is a line, invisible but real. Below that line, you accept excuses. Above that line, you accept responsibility. Most people live below it. They tolerate inconsistency. They justify distractions. They explain away missed opportunities. And slowly, that becomes their life. But the moment you raise your standard, everything changes. You stop accepting average from yourself. You stop allowing weak decisions. You stop lowering your expectations. Because now, you expect more. And expectations drive behavior. So if you expect more from yourself, you act differently. You choose differently. You move differently. And that shift separates you. Chapter 72. You stop trying and start deciding. There's a difference between trying and deciding. Trying sounds like effort, but it leaves room for failure. I'll try to be consistent. I'll try to improve. I'll try to focus. Trying is uncertain, but deciding is final. I will be consistent. I will improve. I will focus. No backup plan, no hesitation, no negotiation. Because decision removes doubt. And doubt is what slows everything down. So stop trying, start deciding, and once you do, your actions will follow. Chapter 73. You stop looking for easy. Let's be honest. Part of you still wants it to be easier, faster, simpler, less demanding. But here's the truth. Easy does not create change. Easy keeps you where you are, because easy requires nothing from you. No growth, no discipline, no discomfort, and without those, nothing changes. So you stop looking for easy. You start looking for effective, what works, what builds, what moves you forward, even if it's hard. Because now you understand, hard is not the enemy. Stagnation is. Chapter 74. You accept that nobody is coming. This is one of the hardest truths, but also the most freeing. Nobody is coming. No one is going to fix it for you. No one is going to rescue you. No one is going to build your life. And that might sound heavy, but it's actually power. Because if no one is coming, that means it's in your hands, your decisions, your actions, your future. And that realization removes waiting, removes excuses, removes dependency, because now you act, not because you have to, but because you choose to. Chapter 75, you become relentless, quietly. This is not loud, not dramatic, not obvious, but powerful. You become relentless, quietly. You show up every day. You do the work. You stay consistent without needing attention, without needing validation. Because now, you're not doing it for others. You're doing it for yourself. And that kind of relentlessness is unstoppable because it doesn't rely on emotion. It relies on identity. Chapter 76. You realize time is moving anyway, whether you act or not. Time moves. Days pass, weeks pass, years pass, and the question is simple. Will you move with it or stay the same while it moves past you? Because time doesn't wait. It doesn't pause. It doesn't care. So if you don't use it, you lose it. And that realization creates urgency, not panic, but clarity. Because now you understand every day matters. The chapter 77. You stop explaining yourself. At the beginning, you felt the need to explain your choices, your actions, your direction, but now you don't. Because you realize people who understand don't need explanations, and people who don't won't be convinced by them. So you stop talking and start doing, because results speak louder than words ever will. Chapter 78. You focus on what you can control. There's a lot you can't control. The economy, other people, unexpected events. But there's also a lot you can. Your habits, your focus, your decisions, and most people waste energy on what they can't control. They complain, they blame, they react. But you shift. You focus on what's in your hands. And that focus creates power, because control creates action, and action creates results. Chapter 79. You build confidence through action. Not thinking, not waiting. Action. Every time you act, you build confidence. Every time you follow through, you reinforce it. Every time you push through discomfort, you strengthen it. And over time, that confidence becomes natural, not forced, not fake, real, because it's built on proof. Chapter 80, the line you never cross again. There's a moment where you draw a line, not publicly, not loudly, but internally, a line that says, I will not go back, not to old habits, not to old thinking, not to the life that kept me stuck. And once that line is drawn, everything changes, because now You're not trying to escape anymore. You already have mentally, and everything else will follow. Now, take this with you. You don't become successful by doing something different once. You become successful by refusing to go back. And from this moment forward, you don't go back. You build, you grow, you move, always forward.